My daughter sent me a voice message meant for her husband. What I heard changed everything. I was folding linens when I heard her voice through the wall. "She is not my mother," she said, casual as you please, like she was commenting on the weather. "She is a parasite in a wool skirt. After this last deal goes through, I am putting her in a home, one with locked doors, out of sight, out of my brand." She thought I was asleep. I suppose at 82, people assume you do not hear so well, but I have always heard everything, even when I wished I hadn't. The knife in those words wasn't new. No, Miranda's tongue had been sharp for years, coated in honey online, dipped in vinegar off camera. But there was something in the way she said "locked doors" that made me stop folding and reach instead for the old recorder I kept in the drawer beneath the tea towels. A habit from my seamstress days, note-taking, voice memoing, documenting fabric orders from demanding brides. Old habits die hard. The recorder clicked on smooth, quiet. I set it beside the basket and listened, heart ticking loud but face calm. She ruins everything. My aesthetic, my vibe, my energy. My brand could be so much more if she didn't sit there like some antique gargoyle in the corner. I mean, I can't post a single video without people asking if she's okay. Ugh, it is ruining the engagement. And then came the laugh. Soft, cruel, rehearsed. Maybe I'll do a charity live stream, stage a little, help me help my mom sob story, play up the elder care angle, cry a bit, maybe get a sponsor to cover the damn facility. I had heard enough. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I turned off the recorder and sat in the quiet of my little corner. The linen napkins still sat, half folded, in my lap. The sun had moved behind the curtain, casting the room in that golden hour haze. I closed my eyes and let the moment pass over me. Not sadness, no. Not a shock either. Just stillness. Like the long inhale before you cut the final thread. My name is Geraldine May Collins. I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, in 1943, back when you could leave your doors unlocked and your grudges tightly locked away. I married at 19, lost my husband in 77, and raised Miranda alone, working 2 or 3 jobs, hemming dresses in a tiny closet, ironing uniforms while unseen. And I never, not once, asked for more than a thank you. When Miranda was 27, she came to me with big dreams and tears in her eyes. She had always been dramatic, even as a child, would cry if a birthday balloon deflated too early. "Mama," she said, "I have a vision, sustainable fashion, clean, green, slow-made, authentic." She made it sound like salvation, but I need help getting the house in my name so I can qualify for a business loan, just temporarily, just paperwork. I signed the papers the next day. She promised she'd transfer it back when the business got off the ground. Of course she did. She said it with a hand on my arm and her eyes wide, like a child again. "Mama, this is our future. I'm building something for us." That was 12 years ago. Now she is 39. Her slow fashion line ships from China. She makes more money crying on Instagram than she ever did selling pantsuits. She wears fake empathy like foundation, thick, glossy, and liable to crack in heat. Her bio reads, CEO, daughter, empath. But off camera, she tells me to try not to look dead when my followers visit. And once, when a brand photographer asked me to smile, she said, "Just take it." She only has 2 facial expressions anyway. Still, I stayed. Because that is what we do, isn't it? We mothers, we stay. We hold the line. We fold the napkins. We stir the soup. We keep the lights on, even when the warmth leaves the room. But this was different. Calling me a parasite, saying I was ruining her brand, plotting to sell me off to some facility like unwanted inventory. That wasn't just cold, it was war. What she did not know, what she never even bothered to ask, was that while she had taken the house, she had never taken the land. The original deed, drawn up in 1982, had a little clause no one but I had ever noticed. Back then, when the house was built, I kept the lot separate. Advice from a farmer's daughter I'd once worked with at the sewing mill. Keep the dirt, even if they take the roof. And so I had. The house sat on soil that still bore my name. And that wasn't the only thing. Miranda's best-selling product line? A line of wrinkle-resistant, self-cleaning linen? It came from a swatch I had developed in my late 60s, trying to invent a fabric I could wipe with just water and vinegar. I'd never pursued it properly, but I'd registered a basic patent, just in case. She had never asked. She had taken everything. My name, my face, my fabric, my home, and she thought that made her powerful. But power, real power, is quiet. It does not shout or posture. It waits, it watches, and it remembers every name it was called. Parasite, she said. Wool skirt, she sneered. Well, she was about to learn exactly what parasites do when cornered. We do not just survive. We host. When Miranda was 16, she wanted to go to a college out in California. Design school, she said. The best in the country. She had a stack of brochures and stars in her eyes. I remember her twirling in the kitchen, barefoot on linoleum, waving her acceptance letter like it was a ticket to heaven. Mama, they picked me. Me! Tuition was a number that made my heart drop. Even with the partial scholarship, we were short. Very short. And loans? They laughed me out of the bank. Too old, too little income, no cosigner. That night, I took my wedding ring off for the first time in 27 years. It wasn't a big diamond. He never could afford much, but it had a setting I loved. A tiny marquise cut stone set in a twist of rose gold. I kept it in the drawer by the bed, next to old grocery lists and love letters he wrote me before he disappeared with that waitress. It was all I had left of a life we never got to finish. I sold it the next morning. Got just under $2,000 for it, enough to cover Miranda's plane ticket, her deposit, and her first month of rent. When I handed her the envelope of cash, she cried. Hugged me so hard, I felt my ribs shift. Mama, she whispered, I'll pay you back, every penny. She never did. 4 years passed. She graduated with honors. Came home with a portfolio full of sketches, a diploma in a shiny case, and a boyfriend named Kellen who wore scarves indoors and always smelled faintly of weed and judgment. She bounced from internship to retail job to unpaid collab opportunities. I watched her struggle, stumble, reinvent. And I always made sure there was soup on the stove and light in the hallway. Because that's what mothers do. When she was 27, she knocked on my bedroom door late one night. Eyes red, mascara streaked. Mama, she said, I have a plan. My own fashion brand. Slow-made, sustainable, real. But I need to put the house in my name, just on paper. So I can get the loan, please. It's not forever. I hesitated. Of course I did. But she looked at me the way she did when she was 5 and scraped her knee, like I was the only safe thing in the world. So I said yes. We sat at the kitchen table. I wore my Sunday dress. She wore a hoodie. The notary came, papers were signed, and just like that, the house no longer belonged to me. It felt like handing over a part of my spine. But I told myself it was an investment. Not in her business, in her. Because love, I believed, was something you give without expecting a receipt. At first, it seemed worth it. Her business picked up, her following grew. She called me her muse in interviews. She took photos of me hemming pants, baking pies, watering the garden. Authenticity, she said. People love it. And then came the whispers. I overheard her on the phone with a friend once, saying, she acts like she gave me the house, like it's some great sacrifice. Please. She hated mowing the lawn anyway. Another time, I passed by her open laptop and saw a group chat. One message from her read, she's sweet but suffocating. Still thinks I owe her something. Like, sorry I was your whole identity? Not my fault. It stung. But I stayed quiet. The worst came during a dinner party she hosted for her influencer friends. I had baked a cobbler, like I always did. Someone asked about the house, how she afforded it. She smiled wide, raised her glass and said, inherited it. Sort of. My mom never really understood business, so I just took over. They laughed. I laughed too, though my throat was tight. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. The same wall I'd painted lavender the year she turned 8. The wall that held the shelf where her baby shoes still sat, gathering dust. And I realized something cruel had settled in between us. Not resentment, no. Resentment has roots. This was lighter, more dangerous. Dismissal. She no longer saw me as a person, just a relic, a branding tool, a nostalgic backdrop with arthritis. I didn't dress the way her friends did. My shoes were orthopedic. My hair was white, worn in a bun. I had age spots and a slight tremor in my left hand. I crocheted instead of scrolling. I believed in paper receipts, handwritten notes, and drying clothes on a line. To her, I was not aesthetically aligned, not youthful, not sleek. In short, I no longer matched the curtains. That, I believe, is why she started pulling away. Not because I had failed her, but because I reminded her of something she didn't want the world to see, where she came from. She built a brand that preached authenticity, but she couldn't bear to show her truth, that she came from hard work and calloused hands, from a mother who sacrificed quietly and aged honestly. And so she told her friends I was controlling, said I was overbearing, said I made her feel watched, all because I made tea when she was stressed, because I asked if she'd eaten, because I was there, always there. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd said no, if I'd kept the house, if I'd drawn a line. But then I think about how she looked that night at the table, scared, hopeful, desperate. And I know, even now, I'd still sign. Because that's the curse of loving someone more than they understand. You give them everything, even the parts they will one day use against you. The morning of the live stream, Miranda was unusually sweet. She made me tea without asking, added a slice of lemon, like she used to when she was little, and had the sniffles. "Mama," she said, "you're gonna be my secret weapon today." I smiled, wary. Miranda only called me Mama on camera, or when she wanted something. Still, I sipped the tea and let myself pretend, just for a minute, that it was a good day. The sun was warm through the kitchen windows, and for a moment I could almost believe she meant it. She wheeled me out into the garden. The folding table was set with her new linen collection, soft creams and oat colors, neatly stitched napkins, aprons, and reusable gift wraps that she claimed honored the legacy of women who sew. There were 2 ring lights, 3 cameras, and a tech assistant named Kira who had pink eyebrows and never once looked me in the eye. "Okay," Miranda clapped. "We're going live in 3, 2. Her expression shifted as if someone had flipped a switch. Eyes bright, smile wide, voice 10 notches higher. "Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another cozy corner of my life. I'm here with someone very special today, my mama, Geraldine. Say hi, Mama." I smiled and waved. "She's the reason I do what I do. The original queen of thread and thimbles," Miranda beamed. "Everything I learned from her." Comments poured in, hearts, clapping emojis, things like, "Aw, you two are goals," and "More of Geraldine, please." I sat still, hands folded in my lap, and watched her soak in the praise like sun on bare skin. She pulled out a napkin from the new line. "These," she said, "are inspired by the fabrics my mama used when I was a kid. I wanted to honor that legacy, but make it modern, fresh, functional." She didn't mention that the fabric, self-cleaning, wrinkle-resistant linen, was mine. A little invention I'd tinkered with years ago. A vinegar-soaked weave method I discovered after too many hours ironing in July heat. I had registered it, quietly, through a friend's son who worked in patents, just in case. Miranda had found the swatch in my sewing basket 2 years ago. "Oh my God, Mama, this is brilliant," she'd said, holding it up like treasure. "Why didn't you ever do anything with this?" I shrugged. No one would have listened. "Well, I will," she said. "I'll bring it to the world." And she did. Just not with my name. The live stream ended with a flourish. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, barely touching my skin, and waved to the camera. "Thanks for watching, fam. Remember, every stitch tells a story." Kira clicked something. The ring lights powered down. The cameras stopped blinking. The show was over. Miranda stood straight, wiped the smile from her mouth with the back of her hand, and turned to me. "Was that smile good enough for you?" she said, slipping into Vietnamese like she always did when she wanted to be cruel without Kira understanding. "Go back to your room. Your face ruins my engagement." I sat very still. She did not look at me when she said it, just gathered her things, lip balm, mic pack, linen samples, and walked off, tapping on her phone. Probably thanking followers, posting clips, chasing applause. I wheeled myself back to the house slowly, quietly. The garden smelled like rosemary and something sour underneath, maybe old soil, maybe me. I passed the sewing room, paused, then went inside. There, beneath the window, was my old sketchbook. Brown leather cover, scuffed at the edges, pages yellowing like pressed leaves. I opened to the back, where I had begun keeping notes. 3 months' worth of words, not mine, hers. I had written them down, one by one, each time she said something she thought I would forget. If I could replace her with a vintage mannequin, I would. God, she smells like mothballs and regret. She's good for content but useless for life. Little daggers on paper, inked like they mattered, because they did. I never wrote poetry, never kept a diary, but this was something else. Not revenge, not even evidence, just memory. My memory, my truth, in handwriting that trembled only slightly now. I closed the book and placed it in the drawer. Then I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the swatch. The original, cream linen, fine weave, soft but firm. I had embroidered the edges with a single line of red thread, a signature, quiet and personal. Miranda's version had no red. She said it didn't test well with the demographic. I stared at it for a long time. That napkin had outlasted 3 marketing trends and 2 of her boyfriends, and here it was, sitting in my hands like a small, quiet rebellion. She built a brand out of it, called it the Heritage Collection, claimed it was inspired by her grandmother, my mother, who died before Miranda was born. In interviews, she'd say things like, "This line is about women who endured, who worked with their hands, who made beauty out of necessity." And all the while, the only hand she ever thanked publicly was her own. The house, the napkins, the narrative, they all belonged to her now, but only because I had given them. Blood and thread, that was the price. No one saw what I saw. The pressure behind the smiles, the resentment hidden in compliments, the way she flinched if I walked into frame uninvited, how her tone changed when sponsors were listening. To the world, she was a visionary. To me, she was a child who had forgotten where the thread began. But I remembered. And so I wrote. I recorded. I watched. Because not all power is loud. Some of it sits in silence, waiting for the right moment to stitch its name back into the fabric. It was a Tuesday. Quiet, gray, with a sky that looked like old dishwater. I had just finished ironing a set of Miranda's new aprons, ones she claimed were artisan wrinkled, but still wanted to look perfect in photos, when my phone buzzed, a voice message. From Miranda? I frowned. She never sent voice messages. Always texts, usually one word, often commands. Pick up. Stay quiet during my call. Don't move the flowers. Curious, I tapped play. Her voice came through the speaker, clear as anything. I swear to God, that old hag is like a moldy wall in this house. I keep her around for the aesthetic, but seriously, after this next brand deal, I'm dumping her in a care facility and staging it as some touching elder care moment. I'll cry on live, get a sponsor, spin it into a campaign. People eat that shit up. There was a pause, then a laugh. Dry, sharp. And she just sits there with her wrinkled little napkins, acting like I owe her something. She's lucky I even let her be in frame. That face is a death sentence for engagement. My hand didn't shake. Not when the message ended. Not when I set the phone down on the lace doily I'd made in '84. Not when I stood up, walked across the room, and opened the bottom drawer of the china cabinet. Inside was a red folder, faded at the edges, the clasp slightly rusted. I hadn't touched it in years, but I always knew it was there. I pulled it out, opened it slowly, and looked at what lay inside. A copy of the land deed, dated July 14th, 1982. My name, full and formal, Geraldine May Collins, typed neatly at the top. The house, built later that year, had a separate title. That title, yes, I'd signed over to Miranda. But the land? The dirt beneath the foundations? Still mine. It had been a condition my lawyer insisted on back then, just in case, he said. You never know what the future holds, Geraldine. Hold on to the soil. It's the one thing they can't build twice. At the time, I thought it unnecessary. But now, holding the yellowing paper in my hand, I realized it was the last thread I had in this whole unraveling mess. I placed the folder on the kitchen table and sat down. Outside, Miranda was doing a photo shoot on the porch, twirling in her new fall collection. I could hear her directing Kira, "Get more sunlight. Make sure you frame it so the house looks rustic but not too old. Keep the rocking chair in the shot, it gives legacy." I was the legacy. But only when the camera was on. I tapped my phone again and replayed the message. Moldy wall. Dump her in a facility. Cry on live. Lucky I let her be in frame. Lucky. That word settled in my chest like a stone in water. She thought I was lucky to sit in her shadow, to be tolerated, managed, manipulated. She forgot who laid the bricks, who sewed the curtains, who bought the damn house. She forgot because I had allowed her to forget. I had raised a daughter on sacrifice, fed her with silence, dressed her in dignity I stitched by hand. And now she was planning to cry about me for likes. I looked at the recorder sitting on the counter. I had been using it more often lately, capturing moments, whispers, passing insults she dropped like lint. I walked over, pressed record, and played the message into it. Twice. Just to be sure. Then, I turned and looked around the kitchen. My kitchen, not by title, but by touch. I had boiled stock on that stove, baked loaves in that oven, mended knees at that table. The walls were painted the same buttery yellow I'd chosen in '89, after Miranda broke her arm and said the old wallpaper was too sad. I'd painted it overnight, in silence, while she slept on the couch. Now, she was ready to toss me out like chipped china. I slid the folder back into the drawer, but not too deep this time, close enough to grab if needed. Later that evening, she breezed into the kitchen, cheeks flushed from golden hour light. "Hey," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I think I sent you something by mistake, just delete it." I looked at her, calm. "What was it?" She waved her hand. "Nothing, just me venting. You know how I get." I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I know exactly how you get." She didn't notice the edge in my voice. She was too busy posting. I watched her for a moment. Watched the way she leaned on the counter I had sanded myself, the way she used her ring to open a kombucha bottle I had paid for, in a house I no longer owned but still scrubbed clean every Sunday. She turned to go, and I said, "Miranda." She paused. "Yes? Do you know who owns this land?" She blinked, confused. "I do," I said softly. "Not the house, the land." She tilted her head, eyebrows tightening. "What are you talking about?" I smiled. "Nothing," I said. "Just history." She shrugged and walked away. And I sat there, in the kitchen she thought was hers, with the recorder humming quietly beside me and the deed still warm from my hands. Sometimes justice is not a hammer. Sometimes it is a seed. You plant it in silence. You water it with memory. And when the time is right, it blooms. The next morning, I rose earlier than usual. The air was cool, sharp, like it had something to say. I brewed my coffee slow, black, the way I liked it before Miranda started bringing home those flavored creamers and insisting I try hazelnut oat foam. I drank it at the kitchen table, staring at the red folder in front of me. Beneath the deed sat another document, thinner, stamped with a patent number and my full name. The certificate for the self-cleaning linen weave I developed back in 2009. The same design Miranda now sold as her flagship product. She had changed the packaging, yes, slapped on fancy names like Hydroweave and Legacy Thread, But the structure? The stitching? The formula for the fiber treatment? Mine. I had filed the application on a whim, just after my hip surgery, using the last of my savings. It took 2 years to process, but when it came through, I tucked it away. I didn't tell Miranda. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept sewing. Now, I laid it next to the deed like a queen, placing her cards on the table. Land, fabric, foundations. She had taken the roof, but I held everything beneath it. And I was done waiting. First, I called an old friend, Ruth McKinnon. We'd worked together at the bridal shop in the 82nds. She was a notary then, sharp as a needle, never missed a signature. Now, she worked in elder law, specializing in property disputes and small business protections. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I told her what was happening, she didn't hesitate. I knew that girl had teeth, she muttered. Didn't know she'd bite her own mother. She agreed to meet that afternoon. I packed the documents into a leather folio, something Miranda had once mocked as grandma chic, and slipped it into my tote. I dressed plainly but deliberately. Navy cardigan, clean slacks, pearl earrings. The look of someone you underestimate. We met at a small coffee shop off Main. Ruth scanned the deed, then the patent. "This is solid," she said. "Land ownership is clear. And the patent? That could gut her entire product line." "She's using it without permission," I said quietly. "No royalties, no credit." "She's built her business on it," Ruth said, eyes narrowing. "Well then, let's start tugging the threads." We drafted 2 letters that day, one to Miranda's legal representation, citing the unauthorized use of patented material and proposing a licensing agreement with back pay. The second was addressed to the production agency managing Miranda's live stream infrastructure. That letter was more delicate. Miranda's streams weren't fully owned by her. She partnered with a boutique platform that specialized in influencer-driven e-commerce. Her contract, thanks to Ruth's research, contained an escape clause. If a third party holding intellectual property tied to her core products came forward, the platform had the right to renegotiate streaming rights. I knew the CEO of that agency. He was my cousin's godson, and he owed me money from a loan I gave his mother in 1993. One phone call. That was all it took. By Thursday morning, I owned the rights to any live stream content involving products made with my patent retroactively. Miranda had no idea. She posted 2 reels that day, both featuring my napkin design. I watched them from my phone, from the porch swing she never sat in. One was captioned, "Legacy, woven with love." I chuckled. Oh, it was woven all right. By Friday, the paperwork was finalized. I now controlled the streaming license for any content featuring my fabric, and I had filed an intent to pursue unpaid royalties on all past sales. Ruth submitted the paperwork to her lawyer. Quiet, clean, no press, no warning. The house still bore her name. But the soil beneath it, the weave that built her empire, the network that broadcast her every curated tier, all of that was mine. That evening, she asked me to help pick flowers for her weekend garden launch. "It's gonna be huge," she chirped. "Over 50,000 viewers, live drop, press coverage. I might even get Vogue to repost." I nodded. Picked lilies, white ones, silent. She had no idea that the platform running her stream now required all content approvals to pass through me. She hadn't read the amendment in her email. Too busy posing. Later that night, I sat at the dining table and reviewed the media schedule. Every item had a tag, product code, patent origin, stream window. I flagged every one of them, then I played her message again. The voice one. Moldy wall. Facility. Cryon live. I saved it to 3 devices. Miranda had always been a performer, a storyteller, a master at spinning pain into engagement. Well, she was about to meet the original author of her narrative. Me. The woman who bled into her bread, who stitched through fevers, who sacrificed quietly, endlessly. The woman who gave her a roof and got rot in return. But this time, I wouldn't raise my voice. I would raise the curtain. And when the lights came on, she would finally see who'd been holding the stage the entire time. There were 82,000 people watching, maybe more. I never cared for those little numbers in the corners of screens, but Miranda did. Oh, how she lived for them. The stream started with a dramatic tilt of her new camera rig, gliding over our backyard like it was Versailles. She called it her legacy garden drop. It was just my garden. My rosemary bush, my creaking wind chime, the roses I planted in 1985 after my mother passed. Miranda wore pale linen and a fake smile. Her voice floated through the air like honey over vinegar. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back. Today is not just a product launch. It's a moment, a celebration of where we come from, of stories, of roots. She turned slightly to give the camera a perfect view of the table behind her, decked out in neatly folded napkins, aprons, and those cursed reusable cloths she always claimed were inspired by family legacy. My legacy. She pointed behind her then, toward me, sitting just out of frame in my wheelchair. This, she said, is my mama, my muse, the reason I do what I do. She taught me everything. Lies sound prettier when spoken in pastels. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, wearing my best wool skirt. She once called it visually tragic. Today, I chose it with care. As she spoke to her followers, tens of thousands of them sending heart emojis, clapping gifs, and crying faces, I began to roll forward, slow and steady, like I always did. I crossed the gravel path with both hands tight on the wheels, my body humming with the kind of electricity you only feel when it's your last move on the board. Miranda didn't notice me at first. She was too busy selling my story. This line, she said, holding up a napkin made from the linen weave I created, is all about legacy. It's about honoring the women who came before us. It's about... I stopped beside the roses. The camera caught me then. I saw the flicker in her eyes. Too late. I turned to face the lens. And I spoke. My name is Geraldine May Collins, I said, my voice low but clear. And I am the inventor of the patented linen used in these products. I am also the legal owner of the land this event is being held on. She froze. The chat exploded. Wait, what? Is this part of the launch? Oh my God, she's amazing. Did she say owner? What's going on? I went on, steady. My daughter Miranda owns the house. That's true, but not the land. The deed to this soil remains in my name. And under Tennessee law, she has exactly 5 minutes to vacate the premises or face a retroactive lease claim for 20 years of unpaid rent. Her jaw dropped. Dead silence on set. Even the harpist stopped mid-note. And one more thing, I said. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out my old recorder. I pressed play. Her voice filled the garden, the live stream, and every home where her followers were watching. She's a moldy wall. I only keep her for aesthetic. After this next deal, I'm dumping her in a facility and staging it for content. I'll cry on live, get a sponsor. Gasps. Comments spiraled. She said, "What? This is abuse. Unfollowing right now. She's evil. I supported this brand for years. Justice for Geraldine." Miranda's face went pale. She lunged toward me, fingers outstretched, but I clicked the recorder off and looked up at her, calm. "No more lies," I said. "No more smiling while you gut me for content." She spun toward her assistant. "Cut the feed! Cut it! Now!" But it was already too late. The live stream cut to black. Sponsors began pulling their tags within minutes. Brands untagged themselves. Influencers unfollowed. The comments kept flooding in even after the camera went dark. Screenshots spread, Twitter boiled. Even the local news picked it up by that evening. And Miranda? She stood frozen in the garden, barefoot, silent. I turned to the small audience in front of us, her crew, her PR manager, a few press attendees. "This land belongs to me," I said. "And I've already sold it to the Historical Preservation Society of East Tennessee. The house must be moved within 30 days. I suggest she find a moving company, not another content team." Then I turned my wheelchair and rolled away. Back through the garden she hijacked for aesthetics. Back into the home she filled with camera tripods and cold tea. Back into my kitchen, Where the sunlight still touched the counter, I scrubbed every Sunday. Where no one was filming. Where I could finally breathe. She didn't follow. She couldn't. Not anymore. Because for the first time in her life, the frame didn't belong to her. It belonged to me. I mailed the letters myself. One by one, hand-signed, sealed with care, and dropped into the blue postbox outside the courthouse, the same one I had walked past for 43 years, every time I paid property tax on a land my daughter believed was hers. The letters went to every brand she had ever partnered with, skincare companies, eco-homeware lines, even the mattress startup she pretended to sleep on once a month for paid content. Inside each envelope was the same message. To whom it may concern. My name is Geraldine May Collins. I am the legal patent holder of the linen used in your product collaborations with Miranda Collins. I did not authorize its use. Furthermore, the location used in associated marketing materials is a property I own, not Miranda. Please be advised that continued use of these materials may constitute intellectual property infringement. Sincerely, G. M. Collins. I didn't expect a tidal wave, but it came. Within 48 hours, 3 major brands publicly severed ties. 2 issued formal apologies, citing new information about the source of materials and creative direction. 1 brand quietly removed every photo with Miranda from their website. The news traveled faster than silk on a hot loom. Her fans, already reeling from the live stream meltdown, were relentless. You stole from your own mother? Shame on you. Unfollowed and reported. Justice for Geraldine. Your brand is a lie. And then came the articles. One after another. The fall of a legacy influencer. Miranda Collins, accused of exploiting elderly mother for profit. From heirloom to heist, the truth behind Miranda's garden launch. She tried to fight back. A video titled, "Let Me Explain." 12 minutes of tears, shaky breath, filtered lighting. She blamed stress, miscommunication. Said, "My mother has always been complicated," and called me a deeply loved but traditional woman who doesn't understand modern branding. The comments turned vicious. And then she did the one thing I was hoping for. She filed a lawsuit. Claimed emotional damages, loss of income, unauthorized sabotage of her business. It was the biggest mistake of her life. In court, her lawyer made the usual noise, said I had no right to interrupt her business, that I had acted maliciously. He painted me as confused, elderly, manipulated by outside counsel. He called me unreliable. Then Ruth, my old friend and attorney, handed the judge a copy of the patent registration, signed, dated, federally recorded. Then she handed him the deed from 1982. Then she played the voice message. The courtroom was silent, save for Miranda's quiet gasp when her own words filled the chamber. Dump her in a care facility and stage it for content. I'll cry on live, get a sponsor. The judge didn't even need to raise his voice. His decision was clear. The linen patent belonged to me. Every product Miranda sold using my design was a violation of federal intellectual property law. The court ruled she owed me back royalties for all prior sales, and more importantly, she had to vacate the land within 30 days. That included her house. The one I gave her. The one she stripped of grace and filled with lies. I remember her face when she heard the verdict, like someone had yanked the ground out from under her and left her floating, confused, untethered. Afterward, as we stood outside the courtroom, she came to me, shaking, eyes red. "You've ruined me," she whispered. I looked at her, calm as ever. "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself. I just stopped covering it up." The next week, the eviction order was posted on the garden gate. White paper, official stamp. A quiet announcement to the world. This place is no longer yours. She fought it, of course. Went back to social media, tried to spin the story, claimed elder abuse, claimed betrayal, claimed I was being controlled by jealous outsiders who hated female success. No one bought it. Screenshots of the court records flooded the internet. Old clips of me helping her cut fabric, holding up napkins, watering the garden, all reshared with captions like, "She used her MOM for clout," and "The woman behind the brand was never her." Reporters started calling me. I didn't answer. But I did speak once. A local journalist asked if I had anything to say to Miranda's followers. I said this: when someone calls you a parasite after you built their entire house, you don't argue. You just remind them who still holds the deed. The story aired that night. Afterward, the Historical Preservation Society called to confirm the date of the house removal. They offered me help finding a temporary place, but I declined. I already had a plan. Miranda tried one last time. Showed up on the porch 2 days before the deadline, face drawn, makeup smeared like she forgot how to perform. "I have nowhere to go," she said. I looked at her. "You had a mother," I said, "and you turned her into content." She stood there, hands trembling, waiting for something. I closed the door. Not out of hate, out of history. Because what she never understood, what so many like her forget, is that you can't build legacy on lies. You can paint it, filter it, hashtag it. But sooner or later, truth comes home. And when it does, it takes its keys back. The house was moved on a Tuesday. Big rigs rolled in at dawn, hydraulic lifts groaned, and the little blue bungalow, once mine, then hers, now no one's, was uprooted like a weed from my garden. I watched from a folding chair on the sidewalk, sipping sweet tea as workers strapped the porch rails and windows shut. It took 5 hours. When it was gone, all that remained was a square of earth, bare, honest, mine again. The next day, I sold the land. Not to a developer, not to someone looking to flip it into an influencer retreat or Airbnb. No, I sold it to the Tennessee Historical Preservation Trust on one condition: that it be protected as a heritage site for Southern women seamstresses. The garden would be rebuilt, the shed I used as a sewing room would be restored, and the name Geraldine Collins would be stitched into the plaque at the front gate, next to the words, "In honor of every woman who stitched her survival thread by thread." I didn't ask for payment in full. Just enough to secure a new apartment, a quiet 1-bedroom at Rosefield Place, a high-end retirement village with big windows, soft carpets, and nurses who speak kindly even when no one's looking. There, I started over. Again. Only this time, I brought others with me. Within 2 months, I launched Stitch and Stay, a weekly sewing circle for women over 60 who had been cast aside. Widows, divorcees, women whose children stopped calling, women with calloused hands and quiet stories. We sat around long tables with old Singer machines and second-hand thread, teaching each other to mend what had been torn: skirts, hearts, lives. Word got out. Local students came to visit, asking for interviews for school projects. One girl cried when I showed her the original patent document. Another brought her grandmother the next week. Then came the call from the morning show. They had seen the court case summary, watched the viral clips, read the think pieces titled "Legacy and Lies: How a Southern Seamstress Took Back Her Story." They invited me to speak. I wore my navy wool skirt and a white blouse I'd hand-stitched the week before. They offered to do my makeup. I said no, thank you. I wanted to look like myself. "Live on air," they asked. "Geraldine, how did it feel to be called a parasite by your own daughter?" I looked at the camera. Steady. Measured. Like I was threading a needle. I said, "Well, parasites survive by attaching to something stronger. But some parasites," I paused, smiling slightly, "some parasites know how to sew pockets. And in those pockets, we carry the things that actually matter. Things my daughter never learned to hold on to." "Like what?" the host asked. "Kindness," I said, "decency, memory, the quiet grace of a life lived with care." They gave me a standing ovation. Back home, the other women in Stitch and Stay had baked a peach cobbler to celebrate. We served it on mismatched china and laughed until we cried. Meanwhile, Miranda was living in a furnished rental off a noisy street in East Knoxville. Her house, technically mobile, sat unused in storage, waiting for someone to care enough to claim it. Her brand deals dried up like spilled milk in Sunday. The content agency blacklisted her. No one hired her. No one followed. She tried to rebrand, called herself the reclaimed daughter, but the internet remembered. Her friends stopped calling. Even Kira, her assistant, now worked for a charity that partnered with senior homes. Miranda wrote me a letter. Not an apology. Just a single line. Was it worth it? I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it inside my sewing basket. Later that week, a high school teacher brought her class to our sewing circle. One boy, quiet, freckled, asked, "Do you ever miss your daughter?" I looked at my hands. They were old hands, lined, marked, but they still worked. I thought of all the nights I stayed up hemming dresses so Miranda could have ballet shoes. I thought of the afternoons I let her pretend I was her assistant during her pretend fashion shows. I thought of the morning she took my house in exchange for a loan, the evening she said I made her aesthetic less clean, the voice message. "No," I said. He nodded, like he understood. And I think he did. A few weeks later, I stood beneath the new garden archway, where my house used to be, now replanted with white lilies and soft green ivy. The sign above read, "The Collins Legacy Garden." A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve. "Is she the lady who made the pocket cloths?" she whispered. Her mother smiled. "Yes, baby, she's the one." And I thought, maybe I was a parasite. But I was the kind that knew how to make pockets. And in those pockets, I kept a lifetime. Not of likes, not of followers, but of stitches and silence, of sacrifice and steadiness. And those pockets? They'll outlast any trend. If you've stayed with me till now, thank you. Stories like mine, stories of quiet sacrifice, of love turned sharp, of justice that walks in silence. They don't always make it to the dinner table. But they live here, in the corners of memory, in the folds of fabric, in the voices of women who were told to sit still and be grateful. But not anymore. Not here. If you believe stories like this matter, if you believe wisdom doesn't shout, it remembers, then I hope you'll stay a while. Hit that subscribe button to follow Grandma True Stories. Every week, I'll be here, sharing another chapter someone thought would stay buried. Because revenge has no expiration date. And when a grandma speaks, the world listens.